Here are 50 most commonly asked interview questions and answers for a position in vulnerability management, each tailored to provide a detailed perspective on handling various aspects of the role. 1. What is vulnerability management, and why is it important? Answer: vulnerability management is the process of identifying, classifying, remediating, and mitigating vulnerabilities within IT systems. It is critical for protecting systems against exploitation by attackers, ensuring compliance with regulatory standards, and maintaining operational integrity. Effective vulnerability management reduces the attack surface and helps in prioritizing security efforts to defend against potential threats. 2. How do you prioritize vulnerabilities for remediation? Answer: prioritizing vulnerabilities involves assessing the severity of the vulnerability, the value of the affected asset, and the potential impact of an exploit. I use a combination of vulnerability scoring systems like CVS Common Vulnerability Scoring System and contextual business information to determine urgency. Factors such as exploitability, network exposure, and whether a known exploit exists also play critical roles in the prioritization process. 3. Describe your experience with vulnerability scanning tools. Answer: I have extensive experience using tools such as Nessus, Qualys, and Rapid7 and CYBERSECURITY for vulnerability scanning. These tools help in automating the discovery of vulnerabilities and provide actionable insights. My role involves configuring scans, interpreting scan results, and integrating these tools with other security systems like SIEMs for enhanced visibility and response. 4. What is the difference between vulnerability assessment and penetration testing? Answer: vulnerability assessment is the process of identifying and listing vulnerabilities in a system using automated tools, whereas penetration testing, pen testing, involves simulating cyber attacks to exploit these vulnerabilities, testing both the security of the system and the effectiveness of the existing security measures. Pen testing is more in-depth and aims to breach systems to discover potential security exposures in a safe, controlled environment. 5. How do you handle false positives and false negatives in scan results? Answer: managing false positives and false negatives requires thorough validation of scan results. For false positives, I manually verify and tune the vulnerability scanner configurations to improve accuracy. For false negatives, I ensure that scanners are up to date and supplement automated tools with manual testing techniques to catch any vulnerabilities that scanners might miss. 6. Explain how you integrate vulnerability management with other security practices in an organization. Answer: integrating vulnerability management involves linking it with incident response, patch management, and security policy development. I ensure that insights from vulnerability scans inform the development of security policies and procedures, and I work closely with the incident response team to prioritize and remediate vulnerabilities that could be exploited in ongoing attacks. 7. What methodologies do you use for conducting vulnerability scans across a large enterprise? Answer: for large enterprises, I use a tiered scanning approach, segmenting the network into critical assets, business-critical systems, and peripheral systems. Scans are scheduled based on the criticality and compliance requirements, using centralized management tools to handle scale and distribution while minimizing network impact. 8. How do you ensure compliance with industry regulations through vulnerability management? Answer: I align vulnerability management processes with compliance requirements such as GDPR, HIPAA, or PCI DSS by ensuring that all regulatory mandates regarding data protection and system security are met through rigorous scanning and remediation processes. Compliance reports are generated regularly to audit readiness and adherence to standards. 9. Describe a challenging vulnerability management project you handled and how you approached it. Answer: in a previous role, I managed a project to remediate vulnerabilities in a legacy system that was critical to business operations but could not be easily updated. I implemented a series of compensating controls, including network segmentation, application firewalls, and enhanced monitoring, to mitigate the risk while planning a phased upgrade of the system. 10. What role does automation play in your vulnerability management strategy? Answer: automation is crucial in managing the scale and frequency of scans and remediation processes. I use automated tools to schedule regular scans, track vulnerabilities, and deploy patches where applicable. Automation helps in maintaining a continuous assessment cycle and ensures timely response to emerging threats without overwhelming the team. 11. How do you stay updated with the latest security vulnerabilities and threats? Answer: I regularly follow industry sources such as SUT, NIST, and CV databases to stay informed about the latest vulnerabilities and exploits. I also subscribe to security newsletters, participate in relevant forums and webinars, and maintain a network with other cybersecurity professionals. Staying updated allows me to proactively address new threats as they arise. 12. What is your approach to vulnerability management in cloud environments? Answer: in cloud environments, I focus on integrating native security tools provided by cloud vendors with traditional vulnerability management practices. This includes leveraging APIs for automated vulnerability assessments and ensuring continuous compliance with cloud security best practices. I prioritize visibility across the cloud infrastructure to monitor for misconfigurations and vulnerabilities. 13. How do you deal with unpatchable vulnerabilities? Answer: for unpatchable vulnerabilities, such as those in legacy systems or third-party products, without support, I implement compensating controls to mitigate risk. This may include network segmentation, application whitelisting, and the use of intrusion prevention systems. Regular risk assessments help determine the necessity of such measures and guide decision-making on potential system upgrades or replacements. 14. Can you explain the importance of asset inventory in vulnerability management? Answer: an accurate asset inventory is critical for effective vulnerability management because it defines the scope of what needs to be protected. Knowing what devices, systems, and software are in use, along with their lifecycle stages and support status, helps in prioritizing vulnerability scans and remediation efforts. It ensures that no asset is overlooked and that all potential attack vectors are accounted for. 15. Describe how you have used risk-based vulnerability management in past roles. Answer: in previous roles, I implemented risk-based vulnerability management by classifying assets based on their criticality to business operations and the sensitivity of the data they handle. Vulnerabilities on critical systems were given higher priority for remediation. I also use threat intelligence to align the likelihood of an attack with the severity of vulnerabilities, optimizing the use of resources for the most impactful protections. 16. What strategies do you use for effective patch management as part of vulnerability management? Answer: effective patch management involves a systematic approach of identifying, testing, and deploying patches. I coordinate with IT operations to schedule patching during less disruptive times, while ensuring patches are applied in a timely manner. Automation tools are used to roll out patches across the organization, and the success of patch deployment is verified through follow-up scans. 17. How do you communicate vulnerability findings to stakeholders? Answer: communicate vulnerability findings to stakeholders through clear, actionable reports that outline the risk, impacted assets, and recommended actions. For technical stakeholders, I include detailed technical data, whereas for business stakeholders, I focus on impact and business risks. Regular briefings ensure that all parties are informed and can make timely decisions on resource allocation and action priorities. 18. What are your methods for ensuring that remediated vulnerabilities do not reoccur? Answer. To ensure vulnerabilities do not reoccur, I implement a robust change management process and continuous monitoring. After a vulnerability is remediated, I schedule follow-up scans to ensure the fix is effective and that the issue has not been reintroduced through subsequent updates or changes. Documentation of each vulnerability and its resolution helps in creating a knowledge base for preventing future occurrences. 19. How do you manage vulnerabilities in third-party applications and services? Answer. Managing vulnerabilities in third-party applications and services involves maintaining an up-to-date inventory of all third-party components, regularly assessing them for vulnerabilities, and working closely with vendors to ensure timely patching. Where vendor support is lacking, I evaluate the risk and look for alternative solutions or additional security controls to protect against potential breaches. 20. What metrics do you track to assess the effectiveness of a vulnerability management program? Answer. Key metrics for assessing the effectiveness of a vulnerability management program include the time to detect vulnerabilities, time to patch critical vulnerabilities, the number of vulnerabilities remediated versus found, and the recurrence of previously addressed vulnerabilities. Tracking these metrics helps in refining the vulnerability management process and demonstrating its value to the organization. 21. Can you discuss any experience you have with regulatory compliance affecting vulnerability management? Answer. My experience with regulatory compliance includes aligning vulnerability management processes with requirements from GDPR, HIPAA, and PCI DSS, among others. This involves ensuring that vulnerabilities that could impact protected data are identified and remediated promptly, and that documentation and audit trails are maintained to demonstrate compliance during audits. 22. How do you involve other IT and security teams in the vulnerability management process? Answer. I involve other IT and security teams by establishing a collaborative environment where information is shared openly. Regular meetings, shared platforms for tracking and managing vulnerabilities, and joint training sessions help in aligning efforts. Collaboration ensures that remediation tasks are understood and executed efficiently, and that security is maintained consistently across all IT functions. 23. What challenges have you faced in vulnerability management, and how have you overcome them? Answer. Challenges in vulnerability management often include managing a large number of vulnerabilities, limited resources, and resistance to operational disruptions caused by remediation efforts. I've overcome these by prioritizing based on risk, automating routine tasks, and building strong cases for resource allocation based on potential business impacts. Communication and education also play key roles in gaining stakeholder support. 24. How do you ensure that vulnerability management strategies stay effective as new technologies and threats emerge? Answer. To ensure continued effectiveness, I regularly review and update vulnerability management strategies to incorporate new technologies and threat information. This involves continuous learning, adopting new tools and practices, and reassessing the security posture as the IT landscape evolves. Regular drills and scenario planning help adapt strategies to changing environments. 25. How do you balance business continuity with the need for rapid vulnerability remediation? Answer. Balancing business continuity with rapid remediation involves understanding business operations and scheduling remediation activities to minimize disruption. I work closely with business units to understand critical times and establish acceptable windows for maintenance. Effective communication and planning ensure that remediation efforts enhance security without adversely impacting business operations. 26. What tools and technologies do you find most effective for vulnerability management, and why? Answer. Tools like Tenable Nessus, Qualys, and Rapid7 and CYBERSECURITY are effective for automated vulnerability scans. Due to their comprehensive databases and ease of integration with other systems. For patch management, I find tools like CYBERSECURITY and SCUM effective. For their scalability and integration capabilities with Windows environments. Combining these with advanced SIEM solutions helps in creating a holistic vulnerability management ecosystem. 27. Describe a situation where you identified a significant security vulnerability and managed its remediation. Answer: in a previous role, identified a critical skull injection vulnerability in an internal web application during routine scanning. I coordinated with the development team to apply a patch and reconfigure the web application firewall as an interim control. We then conducted a thorough review of similar applications to prevent similar vulnerabilities, enhancing our overall security posture. 28. How do you manage the security of devices that cannot be regularly patched, such as medical devices or industrial control systems? Answer: for devices that cannot be regularly patched, such as medical devices or industrial control systems, I implement additional security controls like network segmentation, strict access controls, and continuous monitoring. I also work with vendors to understand the device's lifecycle and potential security measures that can be implemented without impacting functionality. 29. What role does endpoint security play in your vulnerability management strategy? Answer: endpoint security is a critical component of a comprehensive vulnerability management strategy. It helps in preventing, detecting, and responding to threats at the device level. I ensure that all endpoints are equipped with up-to-date antivirus software, intrusion detection systems, and are regularly scanned for vulnerabilities. This helps in maintaining a strong security posture and mitigating risks from potentially compromised devices. 30. How do you measure the success of a vulnerability management program? Answer: success in vulnerability management is measured by reduced vulnerability exposure, compliance with regulatory standards, and the absence of successful breaches due to known vulnerabilities. I track key performance indicators such as the number of critical vulnerabilities closed, time to remediation, and improvements in compliance audits. Regular reviews and adjustments based on these metrics help maintain an effective vulnerability management program. 31. How do you handle vulnerabilities in third-party libraries and dependencies in software development? Answer: managing vulnerabilities in third-party libraries involves regularly monitoring for security advisories and updates from vendors. I ensure that developers are aware of the importance of updating dependencies and provide them with tools and processes for identifying and patching vulnerable components. Automated dependency scanning tools help in identifying vulnerabilities early in the development lifecycle. 32. Can you explain the difference between a vulnerability and an exploit? Answer: a vulnerability is a weakness or flaw in a system, application, or network that could be exploited by an attacker to compromise the security of the system. An exploit is a piece of code or technique used to take advantage of a vulnerability to carry out an attack. Vulnerabilities exist inherently, while exploits are developed or discovered by attackers to leverage vulnerabilities for malicious purposes. 33. How do you address vulnerabilities in legacy systems that cannot be easily updated or patched? Answer: for vulnerabilities in legacy systems, I implement compensating controls such as network segmentation, intrusion detection systems, and application firewalls to mitigate the risk of exploitation. I also explore options for virtual patching or custom security solutions, tailored to the specific needs of the legacy environment while planning for eventual upgrades or replacements where feasible. 34. Describe your experience with creating and maintaining a vulnerability management program from scratch. Answer: in past roles, I've established vulnerability management programs from scratch by defining processes, selecting appropriate tools, and building cross-functional teams. This involved conducting initial vulnerability assessments, defining risk management procedures, and establishing communication channels with stakeholders. Regular reviews and adjustments based on lessons learned helped in refining the program over time. 35. How do you handle vulnerabilities in open-source software used within the organization? Answer: handling vulnerabilities in open-source software involves monitoring for security advisories from the community or vendors, and promptly applying patches or updates as they become available. I also assess the risk associated with each open-source component, considering factors such as the popularity of the project, the responsiveness of the maintainers to security issues, and the availability of alternative solutions. 36. What is the role of threat intelligence in vulnerability management, and how do you incorporate it into your processes? Answer: threat intelligence provides insights into emerging threats and attack techniques, helping prioritize vulnerability remediation efforts based on the likelihood of exploitation. I incorporate threat intelligence into vulnerability management processes by leveraging indicators of compromise IOCs, attack patterns, and threat actor behavior to identify vulnerabilities that pose the greatest risk to the organization. This ensures that resources are allocated effectively to address the most pressing security concerns. 37. How do you handle vulnerabilities discovered in third-party software after it has been deployed in production? Answer: handling vulnerabilities in third-party software post-deployment involves assessing the risk posed by the vulnerability, determining the feasibility and impact of applying patches or updates, and implementing compensating controls if immediate remediation is not possible. I also work closely with vendors to expedite the release of patches and communicate effectively with stakeholders about mitigation strategies and timelines. 38. Describe your experience with integrating vulnerability management into DevOps or Agile development processes. Answer: in DevOps or Agile environments, I integrate vulnerability management by embedding security practices into the development lifecycle. This includes automating vulnerability scans as part of the CI or CD pipeline, providing developers with feedback on security issues early in the development process, and collaborating with cross-functional teams to prioritize and address vulnerabilities in a timely manner without impeding delivery speed. 39. How do you ensure that vulnerability scans do not impact the performance or availability of critical systems? Answer: to minimize the impact of vulnerability scans on critical systems, I schedule scans during off-peak hours or low-activity periods, and limit the scope and frequency of scans to reduce resource consumption. I also work closely with system owners to prioritize scans based on business needs, and provide guidance on optimizing system configurations for minimal disruption during scanning activities. 40. Can you discuss your experience with managing vulnerabilities in virtualized or cloud environments? Answer: in virtualized or cloud environments, I manage vulnerabilities by leveraging native security features provided by cloud service providers, such as AWS Inspector or Azure Security Center. I also ensure that virtual machine images are regularly updated with patches and security updates, and that configurations are hardened according to best practices. Continuous monitoring and automation help maintain security posture in dynamic cloud environments. 41. How do you ensure that vulnerability management processes are aligned with business objectives and priorities? Answer: to align vulnerability management processes with business objectives, I engage stakeholders from across the organization to understand their priorities and risk tolerance. This involves conducting risk assessments, defining service-level agreement slots for vulnerability remediation, and regularly communicating with business leaders to ensure that security efforts are aligned with organizational goals and resource constraints. 42. Describe a time when you had to communicate complex vulnerability findings to non-technical stakeholders. Answer: in a previous role, I communicated complex vulnerability findings to senior executives. By translating technical details into business impact and risk metrics, I used visual aids such as charts and graphs to illustrate the potential consequences of exploitation, and proposed mitigation strategies in terms of cost, timeline, and resource requirements. This helps stakeholders make informed decisions about risk management and resource allocation. 43. What steps do you take to ensure that vulnerability management processes comply with privacy regulations and data protection laws? Answer: to ensure compliance with privacy regulations and data protection laws, I implement data classification and handling policies, ensuring sensitive data is identified and protected throughout vulnerability management processes. I also conduct regular compliance audits and engage legal counsel to validate that our processes and tools adhere to relevant regulations, such as GDPR or CCA, particularly when handling personally identifiable information. 44. How do you prioritize vulnerabilities for remediation, and what factors influence your decisions? Answer: I prioritize vulnerabilities based on their severity, exploitability, and the criticality of the affected assets to the business. Factors influencing my decisions include the potential impact of an exploit on business operations, the likelihood of the vulnerability being exploited, and the regulatory implications of exposure. This prioritization helps in focusing efforts on vulnerabilities that pose the greatest risk to the organization. 45. What methodologies or frameworks do you use to guide your vulnerability management efforts? Answer: I utilize established methodologies and frameworks, such as the National Institute of Standards and Technology NIST, Cybersecurity Framework, and the Center for Internet Security CIS controls for guiding vulnerability management efforts. These frameworks provide a structured approach to identifying, assessing, and managing vulnerabilities, ensuring that practices are aligned with industry standards and best practices. 46. How do you train your team to stay updated on the latest vulnerability management techniques and tools? Answer: to keep my team updated, I encourage continuous learning through regular training sessions, workshops, and participation in industry conferences. We also subscribe to security newsletters, participate in webinars, and engage with professional communities to share knowledge and stay informed about the latest tools and techniques in vulnerability management. 47. How do you handle discrepancies between vulnerability scans performed by different tools? Answer: when discrepancies arise between vulnerability scans from different tools, I conduct a thorough review to determine the reasons for the inconsistencies, such as differences in scanning engines or signature databases. I validate findings through manual testing or additional scans using other tools, and work to calibrate the tools to improve accuracy and reduce false positives. 48. Can you explain how you would handle a zero-day vulnerability impacting your organization? Answer: handling a zero-day vulnerability involves immediate risk assessment to determine the potential impact and developing temporary mitigations or workarounds until a patch is available. I coordinate with security researchers, vendors, and industry peers to gather intelligence about the vulnerability and possible defenses. Communication with stakeholders is crucial to manage expectations and ensure coordinated response efforts. 49. How do you manage the balance between automated and manual vulnerability management processes? Answer: balancing automated and manual processes involves leveraging automation for routine tasks such as regular vulnerability scans and patch deployments, while reserving manual processes for complex vulnerability assessments and remediation planning. This approach ensures efficiency in managing large volumes of data while maintaining accuracy and thoroughness in critical areas. 50. Describe your experience with regulatory audits related to vulnerability management. Answer. My experience with regulatory audits involves preparing detailed documentation of vulnerability management processes, evidence of compliance with applicable standards, and reports on remediation activities. I work closely with auditors to address their queries and demonstrate the effectiveness of our security controls, ensuring that all regulatory requirements are met and documented appropriately. The 50Q and A provided offer a comprehensive overview of the skills, strategies, and practices essential for effective vulnerability management. These questions cover a range of topics from foundational concepts, such as the distinction between vulnerabilities and exploits, to complex scenarios involving legacy systems, third-party software, and regulatory compliance. They illustrate the importance of integrating threat intelligence, prioritizing risks based on business impact, and employing both automated and manual processes to maintain a robust security posture. This set of questions ensures that candidates are well prepared to address real-world challenges in vulnerability management, demonstrating their ability to safeguard organizational assets against emerging threats and adhere to industry best practices. For more exciting tips, tricks, and more importantly, for valuable insights of interviews, please share, like, and subscribe to my channel. It has a lot of valuable information about various insights of interviews. It has a wide range of real-world portfolio projects of various technologies for interviews, and it has wide range of most asked interview questions and answers of various technologies like data science, SAP, AWS, DevOps, and full-stack web development, and more. That will be useful during interviews. It has a wide range of most asked interview questions and answers and real-world portfolio projects of various technologies for freshers, for 2 to 3 years, experienced candidates, and for 5 or above years, experienced candidates to test their skills by knowing most asked interview questions and make themselves ready for interviews.